Thank you. So good morning to you. Thank you for all taking time out, what of I'm sure are very, very, very busy diaries to attend the webinar this morning. We really appreciate both your time, your support, but also I always want to say thank you. I know how many of you right now are delivering Bikeability, our training providers, our instructors and our grant recipients. And I do recognise right now this is an incredibly difficult time with COVID. And we really appreciate everything that you're doing to still ensure that children can get trained and get access to this really vital life skill. So I'm starting with a thank you because it's genuine and heartfelt for everything that our industry is doing right now to support children. So thank you so much. So as Jessica mentioned, we're going to make this as interactive as we possibly can over the next hour or so. We really want to hear from you. This may be our vision, the Trust's vision for the future, but this is something that we have a vision to do together. We can't deliver Bikeability on our own as the Trust. We don't deliver Bikeability on our own as the Trust. This is something that we do together. And that's why this is a fantastic opportunity to really engage you in our thinking, but also to help encourage you to become part of that vision and to help us to kind of deliver this for children out across England. So really excited that you can join us today. So it will be interactive. We'll have polls, as Jessica mentioned. I'm more than happy to take questions kind of as we go, and I will definitely stop and take time to kind of reflect and use those opportunities to hear from you as much as possible. But I did think to kind of begin with, what would be really useful is to start with a bit of a talk from Chris Heaton-Harris, who is the Minister for Cycling. And just bear with me while I just share my screen and get this one up and running for you. So hopefully you are all now seeing my screen, and I'm just going to flick onto a slide. So Chris Heaton-Harris is the Minister of State for Transport at the Department for Transport. Chris has been out recently. He came out in Bike to School Week, which we run jointly with the wonderful Sustrans, and he came out on a visit to see both Level 2 and also Dr. Bike, who we are now supporting as well to get out in schools in this period. And Chris filmed this recently for a conference that happened this week with the Bicycle Association. And I just thought the clip was so beautiful to help to sort of introduce to you to the department's vision around gear change for walking and cycling, that we asked permission to kind of use it today to introduce our vision as well. So hopefully when I click this button, you'll hear Chris talking about his vision and the department and government's vision for cycling. So here we go.
I've been asked to say a few words about the Prime Minister's gear change plan and where the government is with the cycling and walking agenda. The obvious point to make here is that the gear change plan and the unprecedented £2 billion of investment that we've announced alongside it are, well, blimming obvious signs that this government is serious about promoting cycling and walking. The COVID pandemic has led to unprecedented changes, but has also given us the opportunity to rethink many of our transport policies. And as the Prime Minister said, this could be, should be, a new golden age for cycling, particularly given the obvious health benefits. His forward to the gear change plan talks about his own desire to kick off the most radical change to our cities since the arrival of mass motoring. And we've seen some excellent examples of ambitious and innovative schemes up and down the country supported by government funding. The Prime Minister really is serious about this, as I am too. And cycling and walking are no longer the Cinderella subjects in the department, relegated to some sleepy backwater. They are now front and centre and have a profile that they've simply never had before, both in DFT and in Number 10. Few Prime Ministers have taken such a keen personal interest in them. And I know the active travel team in DFT has had far more attention from the folk in Number 10 than they've ever had before. Whether they've enjoyed it or not, another factor. But they're having their feet held to the fire to get on and deliver the commitments in this plan. I guess I could flag a few other thoughts. Our investment in new cycling infrastructure should make cycling, particularly for new cyclists or those returning to it, look safer and feel safer. It's a long-term programme and we're determined to make sure it delivers high-quality results. We'll have a new focus on the quality of what we deliver. We've promised that we'll give every child in England the opportunity to learn how to ride a bike properly, safely, and to enjoy cycling. Cycling is a life skill. Once learnt, never forgotten. Youngsters love to go out on their bikes, so we need to give them the road skills they need while they're still keen to learn. And I see a massive opportunity for the country and the industry with the arrival of e-bikes. E-bikes appeal to a quite different set of people from current cyclists, and no, it's definitely not cheating, and they offer the best chance to make different and longer trips for people who've not wanted to cycle before. So I believe that the future can be electric as well as done by pedals. So to conclude, we're absolutely serious and committed to this agenda. And I'd like to think that the government can work closely with you at both ministerial and official level to deliver this programme of national transformation. We need your support and input on everything from bike repair vouchers to our plans for a national e-bike support programme and cycle training for all who want it. You are the people at the end of the day who are closest to these things, and the department needs and values your expertise, and we want to make sure we use it in the appropriate way. So please stay closely in touch. I'm sure you will do, both with me and my officials, and keep up the excellent work you've been doing. I really appreciate everything you've done so far. So keep well, keep safe, and keep pedaling.
Fantastic. So what a wonderful way to be able to start our vision with hearing directly from the Minister of State for the government's vision. Those of you who've got to know me a little bit over this last few months that I've been in post at the Bikeability Trust know that I didn't come from the world of cycling. I came from the world of child protection and the charity sector and safeguarding. So coming new to the world of cycling, it really feels like this is cycling's moment. I can't think that we're going to get this time again where we've got the political will, which Chris clearly talked about there. You know, number 10 is absolutely fixed and focused on making sure that the cycling and walking action plan with both the infrastructure investment and this promise for every child and every adult to access cycle training is pushed through, even in these turbulent, difficult times. So we're not going to get this political will again. So that's why it's really vital. And the trust is absolutely at the heart of driving forward this vision for children and for adults, and we need to collaborate and work across industry so that we can capitalize on this opportunity. So really great to hear from Chris kind of talk about that. So I thought in sort of introducing our vision, I thought I sort of wanted, oh sorry, it's almost played Chris again there for you. I thought what we do is sort of start with a little bit of reflection back, and I know those of you who are obviously been part of Bikeability for so long, these will be familiar to you very much. So cycling proficiency, as you know, is a word that I will say once people stop asking me about cycle proficiency and start always talking about bikeability, we'll never have to mention again. But, you know, was there for a very long period of time. Now, we're incredibly proud that all of the work of Bikeability and the training that we provide is absolutely underpinned by the National Standard for Cycle Training, and how collaborative that was as a piece of work with over 20 organisations to look at the National Standard for Cycle Training. We've just put in our response to the Highway Code as the Trust, building on your expertise, and it's you know, hugely important that we continue to make sure that that underpins absolutely everything that we do. But Bikeability is still a relatively young programme, even though we're 13 years in now. We're only 3 years in from the Trust taking that over. And the Trust has really put a huge focus over the last 3 years on making sure that our programme is economic, efficient and really effective. And that's been sort of the where we are as to the programme. So we thought we'd then start with, before we go into the kind of the where we want to get to, is to talk about what the biggest barriers and to launch a poll. So Jessica, if you can launch the poll for everybody now, so that you should be able to see that over my screen, and we'll be able to get the poll up and then see what you think are the biggest barriers to children taking up Bikeability. So having thought about where we are, if you can all start to vote on the poll, hopefully you're now seeing that on your screen. I can see people are starting to vote, which is fantastic. So we've got the biggest barriers that we hear about when we go out and speak to instructors and providers and parents. So accessing to cycles, school cycle storage, lack of curriculum time, is the grant funding insufficient, is it parents' fears, is it a complex grant structure? What do we think are the kind of the biggest barriers? And you can choose 3 on there as well. So I can see the votes are coming in. It's quite exciting actually when you can see the lines kind of going up and down. Great. So I can see we're almost there. We've got 53, no, up to 56 of 72 people have voted. So we're nearly there. Once we've got everyone's votes in, looking like it's slightly neck and neck actually with 3 things at the moment. So I think we've got some consistency so far across our attendees, which is great. So almost there with absolutely everyone being able to vote. Okay, so I think we're nearly there. I think well, I can't tell. So just to give my reflections back there, I can't tell you how delighted I am that the top one that's come out there is lack of curriculum time. You might say, Emily, why are you delighted with that one? I'm delighted because I think this is a really significant barrier, and I think this is something that the trust and us as industry can work more to push on. It's fantastic, the commitment of our teachers and teaching staff and school community to enable bikeability to happen particularly at this current time. But it's all still too easy for teachers to be able to say no without having protected curriculum time. So this is something that I think we really, really need to push on more as the trust, and it is absolutely something that we are starting to do already. And we can certainly talk further through our vision. So I'm delighted to see that kind of came top. But I can also see on your perception, I mean, access to cycles for every child and parents' fears of cycles. These are two areas that I simply think that we need to be doing more across industry and definitely working with you more on. I think the Trust as a charity could be doing more in this space if we can secure partnerships to get more access to children in poverty, in deprived areas. This is something definitely that is part of our plans for the future. So really pleased to kind of see those things up there. So Jessica, if you can end the poll. And thank you very much for taking part in that poll. I don't know if any other comments, Jessica, have come up in the chat so far.
Yes, so we've got one question here. That's saying, in addition to the barriers suggested, some head teachers are not supportive. So not only due to lack of curricular time, but because they don't think cycling is that important.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with you at all. And I think we need to be doing more to engage education. Is very much in part of our plans. So I think protected curriculum time would help push teachers, but that's a long road to kind of getting that in place. But we also need to really make bikeability much more easy to be booked and to be taken up so that head teachers don't see this as an extracurricular activity that takes time, resource, staff and staff time and effort. So that's certainly something we're thinking about as part of our plans. Okay, so I'm going to move on from the poll and I'm going to launch in to talking about where we are currently. So I'm really pleased and proud that at the moment, through the Bikeability grant structure, we have been able to train 3.5 million children. I looked quickly on our system earlier in the week. We've got 316 active training providers. Some of you are on the call today, and it's fantastic, and we really value and appreciate everything you're doing. And we've got a fantastic 3,220 active bikeability instructors currently on the programme. What a great way to have this industry that supports delivery to be happening across England, and we're really delighted that happens. And of course, these are not the London numbers as well, because I think Vicky from TfL was joining us today as well. So we work with London, but these are just the England numbers. We've currently got about that 13 million that you will all know very familiar, which funds about 450,000 children a year. And then the trust has its own pot of money, which comes from partnerships income that we can secure in. It comes from award sales, and it comes from public donations as well. And that forms our innovation fund. But the trust is now seeking to do more with that money, and we'll be making announcements on the new special educational needs and disability innovation pot funding that we're putting out in the next few coming weeks. So the trust has also got that as well. I'm really pleased with the work that the trust has done over the past few years to embed quality and to be thinking about quality as part of the programme through our EQA panel. We've got a fantastic members of our EQA panel who go out to do external quality assurance. But in this time, we're just slightly deciding that we think that EQA, given how difficult COVID delivery is not the right thing to be doing for the remainder of this year. What we're now going to offer, and this will be going out very soon to grant recipients and to training providers, is our EQA panel members' time to be able to do support and mentoring to help raise quality for the remainder of the financial year. So you'll be seeing that information coming out soon, and we hope that training providers will embrace that as an opportunity to get some dedicated quality support time to help their EQA. But we've got a good process in place. And then we've also really launched and ramped up our comms programme currently. So thanks to Isabel, our Director of PR and Comms, who I believe is somewhere in the background on this call, and Jessica, who you've met this morning, we're now really launching up a much bigger communications programme. We've launched across the summer period what I think is a really great resource called Tools for Schools, which is now able to go out and support our kind of cross-curriculum ambitions to support industry. So that's a little bit sort of about where we are presently. I've tried so far in this webinar not to talk about COVID, but I'm going to have to talk about COVID. It is what is dominating both the Trust staff team time and everyone who is on this call. I'm sure none of you go through a day without talking about COVID in any way, shape or form. It has been a very, very difficult period. It's caused extreme stretch in the staff team at the Trust. We are a very, very, very small staff team to be able to cope with the level of inquiries, flux and change that COVID has necessitated. And we have tried to get communications out as timely as possible to keep you in touch with what's happening. But inevitably, we have to do an awful lot of lobbying and work with government. But what I hope has come through this COVID period time in the present is that you are getting a sense as our providers and our grant recipients that the Trust is fighting your corner. And we have been doing that even this week, particularly to make sure that bikeability can happen in a COVID secure way, that it's recognised by government, that this is something that's vital for both pandemic recovery, for good environment, for health and well-being of children, for confidence and everything that we know bikeability already delivers, but that we are constantly doing that. And while schools are open, bikeability can and should happen. So we have worked really hard in this period to make sure that we've got robust processes in place so that if COVID cancels courses, we can support our industry. So our instructors and our training providers will be able to keep going through this period. So if government support schemes don't happen, the Bikeability grant is there to be to support industry, because we vitally need to keep you employed, keep you with us, so that when it gets to scale up, we still have an industry that works. So we are really working hard and working around the clock. And I'm just so delighted. If you haven't seen the announcement we were able to put out yesterday, I'm sorry it took us a few days to get there. We were waiting on DFE to run through all of our guidance again and confirm their own guidance in respect of school sports and external coaches and external organisations coming in. But delighted that we were able to lobby really hard and that DFE are absolutely backing that bikeability can and should be happening in schools right now across this second national lockdown period. And what we've done, if you haven't already seen it, and relates to the question that we've had earlier in this webinar about head teachers, is we've issued a letter to head teachers to help reiterate to them just how important bikeability is right now for children. So that has hit your inboxes. We hope that you're able to share that with head teachers. And then we're further now working much more with Department for Education, and we're also planning some great new resources that they will share around the school community about having bikeability in schools. So there's lots happening in the present, but I didn't want to put COVID on as a particular slide on there. So you will also know these stats, but I just thought it's helpful to share with you with those. Bikeability happens across the whole of England. We have a pretty kind of equal-ish grant structure that goes across all the different regions, and that's how the money is then spread out and the levels that happen across the different regions. So the numbers of children that have been trained in our core levels and the numbers of children that got trained in our plus levels across the regions in 1920. The numbers for this year obviously will look slightly different because of COVID and the number of cancelled places that we had, but we know how hard everyone is working to make sure as many children as possible are able to get bikeability. So that's where we are in the present. So I want to take another poll. And whilst we're taking another poll, I think I'll ask Jessica just to check if there are any other kind of questions coming in the Q&A function as well for me. So this is the poll to then, we're now in the present again. So what would you like to see us take more of a focus on? So what's the one that's most important to you? Should we be doing more to encourage underrepresented groups to cycle more often? Should we be doing more to tackle disadvantage and poverty? Should we do more with special educational needs and disabilities? Do we need to target parents more with sort of behaviour change campaigning work and information? Or should we be doing more to upskill our school staff to teach basic cycling skills? So we'll get that poll up and running. And then Jessica, are there any other comments or questions?
Yeah, we've had lots of Q&A, so thank you everybody who is using that function. We're just managing them internally as a Bikeability Trust team, and then at these points, Emily will answer live any of them. So there's a couple that we've typed answers to, which you should be able to see on your screen, but there's also some that we're going to answer live here. So I'll take this one just to start. So Clive asked, can the Trust support providers with a newsletter to all schools to promote what Bikeability can do? Now, Clive asked this before you talked about our letter to head teachers, Emily. So that's our kind of first attempt to do that and to provide a little bit more to schools directly. We'd really appreciate your feedback on that letter, and if that is useful and it's something that you'd like us to continue doing, because we are aware that there is more resources that we can provide direct to schools to help make the case for Bikeability on your behalf. The Tools for Schools also does this, and we're reviewing that at the moment and looking at how we can expand those packs to send into schools. We sent them in for Bike to School Week in collaboration with Sustrans in order to reach more schools that we aren't doing currently. So we're trying to build that, and hopefully you can start to see how that is. But as I say, your feedback is really helpful. We've got a question from Andrew here about economy. I've just clicked on that one, that's asking about the recruitment that we've had and the huge increase in recruitment. Would you like to answer that one, Emily?
Yeah, I absolutely can answer that one. Andrew, we have increased the staff team. So whilst it's absolutely vitally important and will always remain a strategic priority of the Trust to ensure that economy and efficiency are at the heart of what we deliver as the Trust core staff team. The Trust core staff team has been really significantly understaffed for a period of time, in the board's view and in my view. If we want to have an ambition and a vision to be able to support industry more effectively, to be able to drive through with a huge increase in the amount that Bikeability does, we need a larger staff team to be able to do that. Those roles are temporary. They are temporary whilst we secure the resource in the comprehensive spending review to be able to expand the Trust. But I also, as I've mentioned earlier in this session as well, the additional added workload that COVID has created on the Trust team has really created such significant stretch. So we need to be able to support the staff team in this period because there is that huge recognition of additional workload. But equally, we've had vacancies, and we've just chosen to use the release of those vacancies and posts in different ways. So we haven't really hugely significantly added to the core staff team's wage bill currently, but I do take your point about economy and efficiency. We're mindful of it, but we also need a functioning staff team that has the time and the capacity to do everything that the Trust wants to do.
And then I'm just going to raise one more question. We've got some more coming in, which we'll come to later, but we'll want to go back to the poll in a moment. But there's just a question here about any plans to make the awards materials more environmentally friendly, and also how that will help with COVID and reducing transmission risks.
Yeah, so down on the environmental friendly point, absolutely. So we have just sourced a new supplier so all of the materials will be fully recyclable. We're just getting final proofs and things in that. So future awards materials will be more environmentally friendly and sustainable because they're coming from sustainable and recycled sources. So the point about transmission risk and award materials is a well-made point. I've seen schools and providers dealing with this very differently in different ways. So whilst it is wonderful for Bikeability instructors to be able to give awards materials on the day, that does increase transmission risks. So I've seen schools obviously wait the 72-hour period to then be able to give out awards materials. But awards materials are a really important point. Schools love them, parents love them. Occasionally I pick up the phone calls that come into the office, and I was talking only last week to a parent who'd phoned up because her son had lost his Bikeability badge on the way home from school that day, and he was absolutely distraught. So those types of things are really important to children and important to recognise the skills that they use. So we will always want to continue with a level of awards materials. So should we go back to the poll? Thank you for taking part in the poll here. So I can see the results have come in with pretty much most of the votes being cast. So it looks like parents has come out top. So more information for parents and carers, really important. Yeah, I hear this a lot when I speak to instructors and training providers, particularly, that it is parents' fears, parents' barriers, parents' perceptions can be such a significant thing that stops children from being able to take up bikeability. So we agree that we could and should be doing more in this space as well, to be able to reassure parents. And also to help them to access other cycles. We do take a lot of parents' calls at the Trust, which is something that I didn't realise we did until I started picking up the phone. And parents are often just really wanting to ask basic questions about how does bikeability happen, and that does make me think that we need to be doing more to reassure parents and give them information about that as well. So it looks like the second one is coming out as poverty, so tackling disadvantage and poverty. Again, I've mentioned it earlier on this webinar, but we also agree this is something that the Trust has a longer term ambition to be able to do more of, to make sure that every child can access bikeability training. And if access to a cycle is the barrier, then we need to be doing more to represent that. Great, so we're going to close that poll now and then carry on. So end the poll. Great, thank you very much for continuing to take part in those. So that's kind of the where we are currently, and then into the present. So where we want to now move back to is to think about the future, and think about the next 5 years, or sort of 4.5 years. So the Trust has been doing some work to think about our own future to take us up to 2025. And what you know and what you heard from Chris here this morning is that we've got this fantastic political leadership right from the top, right from Boris Johnson, from the gear change vision and action plan that's come out of that really has put cycle training at the heart of that delivery plan. So now we've got this political commitment. The Trust has been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. Some of you have been involved in the work that we're doing behind the scenes to really put into DFT and to Treasury, what does that look like as an ambition bid? And I'm going to talk you through a little bit of that later on in this webinar. But what the Trust has also done in this period with our Board of Trustees and our staff team and our honorary patron, Philip Danton, is we've been doing some work to think about our own future. As much as Bikeability's programme future is tied to the comprehensive spending review, so is the Trust's. And so what we've done in this period is that we have looked at our own charitable mission and objectives, and then we've put together a plan for the next 5 years in terms of a set of a revised mission, a revised vision, and a revised set of strategic goals. And this is our revised mission. So our charitable objective doesn't change. We are absolutely here to advance the education of the public, and with that particular focus on children that the Trust will retain. But what we're really pushing our vision a little bit more towards is to start to see cycling as a skill for life. We want Bikeability to be absolutely the first step on a child's journey to being a cyclist for life that enjoys the love and the joy and the fun of cycling, and seeing it as a life skill. And that's what our mission will now be very much kind of focused on. And then how we want to aim to do that is we've set ourselves some real key aims to make sure that we are the leading programme. We're the only government-backed programme, but we are the leading programme for cycle training. And whilst, yes, Bikeability can and should be training adults, and we're so excited that we've launched Bikeability Family in this period, most of our delivery will always have a child focus in terms of where the grant and where the Trust focus its time. We will have adult training, but most of it will be most of our core delivery will still be child focused. We absolutely want to make sure that quality is at the heart of everything that we do. So driving up quality, making sure that consistent delivery happens across the whole of England is always going to be a focus for the Trust, and the right focus. We also want to take much more action on inclusivity. So the barriers to participation and ensuring that every child can take up Bikeability and every adult take up cycle training is something that we want to make more of a focus on in this period. And then I've said it a few times this morning, we've had it in a question as well from Andrew, efficiency will retain a focus, making sure that we position the Bikeability programme to be efficient and economic and the best value for money is the thing that we will constantly do to strengthen our argument always to government, that this is not something that's a nice to have funding opportunity for UK government. It's a must have that helps the economy and absolutely supports huge industry and drives change for the future for children. So efficiency will always be a focus for us. But then we also feel the trust needs to be doing more. You know, we're a very small organisation. Even with our providers and our instructors, we're still relatively small in the landscape of cycling. So working with other cycling organisations, working with walking organisations, working with other groups, other industries is just vital to extend our influence. And how we want to extend our influence is we need to do more to be able to share the evidence of the impact of cycle training across all different sectors. Yes, this is a transport programme, but it works in education. It's got huge amounts it can share across the environment, across health, across leisure, and we can and should be doing more to use our influence in this space. And then the final sort of aim that we've put underneath our mission is absolutely how we should collaborate more. So I want to get Bikeability a household name. The day that a journalist never asks me about cycling proficiency and just says the words Bikeability will be the day that we know we have done enough to kind of collaborate and to really improve our brand and our perception out there with the general public and with influencers. So that's the mission and the aims. How we'll bring those to life is through a 5-year plan. We're in those 5 years, we're going to help 5 million children take up bikeability cycle training, with thousands of families and adults as part of that as well, through 5 strategic goals. So 5 years, 5 million, 5 goals. So the first thing to that is we've got to secure the funding. So the comprehensive spending review, which as you may know, has now been chopped to a 1-year, not a 3-year programme for revenue, but we are still pushing for the 3 years. We need to secure a much larger funding envelope. If the ambition is for every child, we have to do a huge amount to scale up. Currently, our grants programme will fund about 450,000 people. There are 650,000 children in each of the year groups. We have to have a huge scale up to be able to reach every child, and we need to do that with you. But first of all, we need to secure the funding to do it. And we've put in an ambitious offer to the CSR programme, to DFT and to Treasury to enable that to happen. The second strategic goal is to really drive up quality. So through our quality assurance process, through the work that the Trust is doing with the EQA panel, through the work that we do with our industry training providers, through the work that we do through the instructor qualification, we want to make sure that we drive up huge high quality delivery. So bikeability for all happens everywhere and happens consistently. We want to secure more partnerships. So if we are to remove barriers to cycling, to work with more children in poverty, which you've identified as a priority on this webinar this morning, we need to support, get more funding in so that we can do that, and we can then remove those barriers. And ultimately, we also want to always make sure that we are encouraging more children and adults to cycle more confidently and more often. That's been an aim of the Trust for a significant period of time and will continue to be an aim for the Trust. And then the fifth and final strategic goal is to really, so that I've mentioned before, that we really want to demonstrate the impact of cycle training across all these different policy areas that you see. I don't want us to be ever a nice to have, a nice to fund, because we have the political will and the political leadership that happens to sit in office at the time. This has to be seen as a core part of government delivery that is not a nice to have. And we can do that if we're sharing more readily the impact that cycle training has across all different areas of policy. So that's that really is sort of, in essence, the top line vision that the Trust has for the next 5 years. But you are very much part of that. We want to work this much more through with you. And I'm going to talk you through a bit more about the Bikeability for All programme after we do this next poll. But what we're very interested in at the moment, because we're right in the middle of negotiating for 2021, is what do you think the Trust should be grant funding more of in the next year? So we're putting up the poll now, and then we'll ask you to take part in the poll to see what your thoughts are about the next year. Jessica, are there other questions that we can answer while the poll is going up?
Yep, we've got lots of questions coming in, so thank you again. Some of these may get covered later on when we start to talk about Bikeability for All, but we've got one question from Rohin. At what capacity are the trainers? Are they being underutilised by local schools participants? And is there the biggest challenge gaining adoption or increasing capacity?
So those are both pretty big challenges.
Big questions.
So our bikeability instructors under capacity at the moment. So the capacity right now is linked to the grants programme that went out. The most frequently parliamentary question that I have to answer for ministers in Department of Transport is, you've committed to fund every child, but why can't my child get access to Bikeability this year? And it's because we're linked with a 4-year grant cycle programme that did not promise Bikeability for every child. So right now our instructor capacity is linked to how much grant funding exists in the system up until next year. That will change. That will change when we're able to secure a Bikeability for all offer over the coming years. And we absolutely need to make sure that we grow our recruitment and our instructor workforce to be able to meet the demand. I think the other thing that I reflect on when people talk to me about capacity and instructors as well is that currently the instructor workforce and the opportunity for instructors, it's not always seen as a career opportunity. We know a lot of our instructor workforce, hugely committed as they are, do it as a part-time opportunity. Others would love to be able to take on more training and more support. So we need to get the grant money into the system, and we also need to do more to support our instructor workforce to see this as a career and have other development opportunities to engage as well. So that's something that is being baked into the Bikeability for All programme. On your point about adoption, I think we've covered that slightly in previous questions around how we feel at the Trust we need to do more to push education to really see this as a core part of curriculum delivery. Once it's on the curriculum, head teachers will want to support this. They will run it because they will be targeted to running it, and therefore you will get greater take up. But I so fundamentally believe that until we've got this on the curriculum, every child is going to be a very difficult stretch to be able to get to.
Just having a look at the other questions, if we've got time to answer one more. So on the back of that, there's a couple of questions from Andrew which reflect what you've just said there, so perhaps you can expand. But he asks that, is the crux of the problem not about the inability to make training as a living? And he also asks that there's been obviously additional workload and cost for the Trust, but what support are we offering to schemes that are having the same challenges?
Yeah, great. So we are fixed to a grants programme currently, as you well know, that funds our training providers. And what the Trust has done in this period is actually negotiate and agree that training providers can access the grant scheme if they're not able to access the government schemes for COVID cancelled places. We do recognise that this is a really difficult time for training providers and industry, but we are at the moment running with a very fixed grant system. We are looking at that for the future. So when I talk about Bikeability for All, we will look at the grant system. So I think I'll stop it there for the second and we'll move in, because I'm going to address some of those questions when we talk about Bikeability for All.
Thanks, Emily. Yeah, we'll leave the questions for now and come back to the rest later, but please keep submitting those. It's really helpful.
Great, thank you. Yeah, very, very helpful to hear from you. So in terms of looking at the poll, I think we've got the first one that's a little bit more kind of split, actually. So we've got a Bikeability family and focusing on children being the two that have come out top, and then adult being there as well in the middle. I was really disappointed that the national lockdown guidance means that we can't formally launch Bikeability family. We were about to put in some money which would enable about 2,500 families to be trained in Bikeability family. Unfortunately, during this national lockdown, COVID conditions are going to mean that cannot happen. But we hope to get this out to grant recipients anyway, to get them to prepare for as soon as those lockdown restrictions lift and you are able to have one household group training with an instructor, that will be ready to go. But I'm really pleased to see the industry and the excitement that there is about Bikeability family. So thank you for taking part in that poll. Okay, so let's move on then to thinking about what is Bikeability for All. So those of you who've been around the Bikeability programme in the past may have heard the staff team talk about the universal offer. We've got the wonderful David Shannon, who's from Islington, and the wonderful Julia Ewins, who is a scheme provider and an SGO as well, who are now our 2 project directors who are leading on our Bikeability for All programme. It was called Universal Offer, and it was David and in fact Patrick Jarman, who I think is also on here, he's on our development team, all looked at it and thought it sounded a bit like Universal Credit. So we came up with the Bikeability for All programme as a working title for it. So this is the Trust's ambition and vision, which we are working with DFT and with Treasury to pull off, that really underlines the Prime Minister's commitment in the gear change document to make sure that every child and every adult can access cycle training. So what we've set at this point for the Bikeability for All programme is a set of 4 principles. So we want to make sure that these 4 principles run throughout our thinking on the Bikeability for All programme. And I know many of you have also already been involved in helping us think this through, or have already signed up to the huge number of stakeholder engagement sessions that the team are setting up to make sure that, that we're hearing directly from you, because it's your expertise, your insight and your evidence that will help guide our thinking as we put this programme together. So these 4 principles that you see, so simplification is the first one. We do think that we could simplify the delivery model, the grants process. We want to make sure that it's as easy as possible so that we get the best efficiency and impact. We want to make sure that this lifelong progression and seeing cycling as a life skill is absolutely built in to the way that we teach. So that will also mean much more thought about how do you have a more flexible model of delivery as well, being the third session, being the third principle. Not all riders will need full training. Some will only need practical assessment, but at the moment we don't have flexibility within the system to be able to do that. So we definitely think that these need to be some of the principles that sit underneath. And then the 4th principle is absolutely about redesign. We fundamentally believe that we need to redevelop the Bikeability programme over the first 2 years to be able to offer a universal Bikeability for All offer by 2024. So this is the programme of work that we are proposing and seeking the funding to be able to do through the Comprehensive Spending Review programme to reach that every child offer by 2024. So as I mentioned in that sort of introduction, it is pending the Comprehensive Spending Review. We are lobbying hard. We have put in a very good, ambitious bid to enable this to be fully costed to take us up to March 2024, but we are all pending on announcements from the Comprehensive Spending Review. And then the programme that we think we need to put in place is absolutely about year 1, so next year being to evolve the programme, year 2 to test some of those ideas, and then year 3 to embed it. And there's a number of ways that we'll do that across this period. So it's a hugely ambitious programme, but we are also very mindful and conscious that this is not only has this been a difficult year, but we have a significant amount of work to be able to do. We don't think it would ever be right just to launch a programme next year and expect that we can kind of scale up. We need to do this in a staged process to both support industry and to be able to reach those targets. So that's the sort of the indicative timeline that we're setting for this. When it comes to the programme and what we think the programme needs to look at, so we've split down the programme and these are top level thoughts at the moment, which are being worked through with project directors and through our stakeholder engagement that we're doing. So we absolutely think that we need to enhance and engage and work more with the school community to deliver bikeability. So we particularly think at Key Stage 1, it's about focusing on children gaining off-road cycle handling skills and working within the school community, or the school community continuing to contract a bikeability provider to do a reworked version of kind of balance, learn to ride and bikeability level 1 together. We think we could be delivering grant monies direct to schools. We think that we could be training teachers and TAs to be able to take on some of this responsibility, to embed it within the school curriculum. And we also think we can be doing more to deliver curriculum resources so that teachers can be teaching cross-curriculum to get children excited about cycling as well. That does not replace instructors. It's about enhancing and helping the school community to really embed this across there. And we're specifically working and talking a lot to DFE about this as much as DFT as well. In Key Stage 2, we absolutely love what Bikeability Level 2 and Bikeability Fix is currently doing. When I took Chris Heaton Harris out to go and see Bikeability Level 2 in Bike to School Week, I was absolutely knocked over, literally, by how excited children were about blowing up an inner tube when they took part in a kind of a Bikeability Fix session. Just the excitement, the enthusiasm, and the learning a new skill that took them beyond the on-road and off-road cycling skills, but actually into being able to maintain and fix their bike as well, was just something that really struck a chord with me, and something that I would really want us to work into the grants program in the future, and work into that course. So Key Stage 2, very much instructors going in and delivering what we currently deliver. Then we know, and you know, because you know how hard it is to get out into secondary schools to be able to deliver Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 bikeability and do Level 3. So we do think this needs some quite radical rethought and rework. We do think there are definitely opportunities to develop and to test some new forms of delivery, and certainly harnessing online and classroom-based models of delivery, still having instructors being able to deliver. Absolutely, that will still be at the heart of what we want to do here, but very much we think there's an opportunity to develop something like a VR program that could go a lot wider than our current Bikeability Level 3 program is able to do, to go and teach children. So a really exciting opportunity to work with technology that children love. I've done this with an apprenticeships program with Department for Education on welding, and children, Key Stage 3-4 children, queue around the block to get access to this VR program. And I definitely think it's something we can do to excite and motivate them about cycle training. And then with adults and families, what we've put into our ambition offer in the Bikeability program is we very much think that this is something that we could and should be delivering. Does it get called Bikeability Family, Bikeability Adult? Not sure yet, something we need to work through. Is it more cycle skills versus cycle training? All these things need to be worked through, but it has to be absolutely very much bespoke, very much when adults and families need it, and very much designed on what they want to use their family or adult cycle training for. So we think we've put some money in for a grants program to be able to deliver training for adults and for families, but we'll see what kind of comes out of the CSR program around that. So that's the offer. Jessica, I'm just conscious, were there any questions about the coming in about the offer, or should we just carry on talking about the other parts of the program?
No, at the moment we've got some questions coming in, but we've got a good point here from Peter about whether there's plans to include bikeability in Ofsted requirements as an incentive to schools, and if that's part of the future planning.
It could be part of the future planning. Ofsted, as you will all be familiar and know, have just launched a brand new Ofsted framework, and they are not planning, because that requires a statutory instrument within Parliament. They're not planning on reviewing that for the next, I think, for the next 4 years actually now. So it would be difficult to get it into Ofsted in the short term. But in the new Ofsted framework, what they talk about very clearly is a holistic programme that needs to be taught cross curricula, and there's a quality of education judgment that now sits in the new Ofsted framework. So that in itself could be used if, and it is an absolute if, we are able to secure an opportunity for bikeability and cycle training to be on the national curriculum. So you could see it that way. So I would look at it that way. I can see Philippa Armitage has raised a hand. I don't know if you can see that one.
Yeah, I'll just let Philippa come talk. Philippa, can you type your question into the Q&A and then we can come back to that shortly?
Great. Okay, we'll come back to you, Philippa. So as soon as you get that, Jessica, I'll answer it. So I'll carry on talking about the delivery program. So to complement our thinking, so this is the top line that we're sharing with you, but to complement the thinking, there are a huge number of opportunities to engage on this. So we do think we need to review the Bikeability Plus suite. We want to look at what we can kind of keep, what we can integrate into core programs, and what we could maybe deliver through kind of a digital aspect as well. We want to get this money out that the Trust has got on our SEND pilot. So the Trust is putting in about £300,000 to a special educational needs and disabilities pilot. We'll be launching that over the coming weeks and asking grant recipients and training providers to put in bids to help us to pilot that work. And this is about helping us to sort of set the grant levels for the future to make sure that we are reaching all children. Currently, in our delivery from last year, we reached 1% of SEND pupils. I think the national statistics are across the school population that 15% of pupils have SEND. So whilst we know historically there's been underreporting because it wasn't a mandatory requirement to record SEND pupils, we definitely need to do more in this space, and the Trust wants to launch that pilot to help us to do that. And I've talked about most of these other points. So, you know, very much we want to put in new classroom resources, work across the curriculum and really embed cycling and the joy and the love of cycling into the school community much more effectively. And we do think, because we love Bike to School Week, we love working with Sustrans on this. It's a real highlight for us at the Trust staff team every year. We do think that Bike to School Week gives a really significant focus for helping school community turn their attention to cycling. And we think we can make more of that with greater levels of cross-curriculum resources. So that's the delivery programme. I'm going to carry on talking through some of the other, in a bit more depth about some of the other parts of the Bikeability for All programme. So we do think there needs to be a simpler grant structure. We're rewriting kind of the bikeability management guides. Those we'll be constantly looking at as things change over the coming time. We do think we need to be delivering more ambition at a local authority level and having grant allocations based on pupil numbers, so you're reaching more children that way. And we absolutely think this kind of principles of flexibility is really, really important in the grant structure. I said I'd mention, in response to another question from Andrew earlier about the grant structure and support to training providers and instructors. One of the things that we think we need to look very clearly at the grant structure is what is the most effective form of delivery that gets the most amount of money out onto programme delivery. So how can we make this a more impactful, how can we make instructors a better resourced job that people want to stay and do more often, has to be part of setting the grant levels for the future. How can we build in the realistic costs of admin, but whilst making a focus on ensuring as much of the grant gets out on delivery? All of these things need to be looked at so that we've got that really efficient and effective grant structure, and we've got a grant per head level that supports industry so that we don't lose industry. And that's a real drive that the team and I will be looking at, and we really welcome views and thoughts about how we can make this an efficient and effective grant structure for the future. So that's some points on grant structure. In terms of digitisation, one of the ways that we think we can support industry is to introduce a national booking system so that the central admin costs for a national booking system are shouldered nationally, and it's not down to individual providers who are having to provide their own CRM systems or booking systems to be able to do that. This could be delivered efficiently and effectively across so that even schools, parents, carers, training providers, instructors are all able to use one national system that does everything from booking to consent forms to evaluation and all those other things. And that's a way of being able to save some admin costs for individual providers. And that's certainly part of our digitisation. We also want to do much more on continuing professional development. So e-learning for teachers and TAs, e-learning more for our instructors, so that you've got a definite kind of path to getting access to everything from safeguarding training to being able to do sort of behaviour change campaigning, you know, lots of different opportunities to skill up our instructors in different ways. And we also think that the development of things like app-based resources, so it would save admin time, burden time. So instead of you doing paper-based versions of feedback forms, you can have instructors out there in the field doing it on an app-based version, so that it just saves time so that you're out there and not having to do the admin afterwards. And then I've already talked about the VR element and the online classroom resources around there as well. So those are baked into the offer that we're putting together. And then the final thing is that we really do need to redevelop and revamp the Bikeability website offer. Currently, we have 3 websites. We need one website that has a better user journey and all the right information all in the one place, so that we're not splitting that and we're saving money that way as well. So that's the sort of the plans on digitisation. Then on instructors, many of you may have heard me say this before, but we have put in for an instructor bursary. Depending if we get this in the CSR, our plans are very much is that we want to be able to grow the workforce. We know we need to grow the workforce, and we know we also need to grow the workforce, particularly around diversity and inclusion and equality. So an instructor bursary has been put in for, which would fund 50% of instructor courses for the future and increase the number of instructors registered. We've also put in resource for a national instructor recruitment campaign so that we can shoulder again some of those recruitment costs centrally to save our training providers that sort of time and effort as well. So we are thinking about ways that we can definitely support you as industry more effectively at the Trust. Absolutely making sure that we've got that more CPD in there for instructors as well. So those are our kind of thoughts about instructors. So if you haven't already signed up, and I'm hoping that most people have already signed up or secured a spot, we have all of these sessions happening across November and December for training providers and grant recipients and instructors at varying different times. And you can, the emails have gone round, but we can send round again all of the sign up sheets with these so you can sign up to take part in Bikeability for All meetings. You'll hear some of the information, in fact, quite a few of the slides that we've run through on Bikeability for All. David and Julia will run you back through again, but these will be workshop sessions where you can really actively engage on some of the big questions that we're needing to run through in order to put the detail that sits underneath our roadmap to getting to Bikeability for All by 2024. So I would really encourage you, if you haven't already taken part, please do sign up. And I know we can offer a small number of one-to-one sessions as well, and we're very, very, very keen to get any feedback. We've set up a Bikeability for All email address, so it's bikeabilityforall@bikeabilitytrust.org, and you can send through questions, queries, comments, suggestions to the team as well. And we're very open, very wanting to work this with you. This is not a vision that we are putting out there to say we've got all the answers. We don't have all the answers. We need your engagement. We want your support, and we want to make this something that we do collaboratively together. So the team are absolutely committed and really genuinely wanting to work with you as industry to make sure that we get this vision right. So that's a bit about Bikeability for All as well. So we've got a final poll, and then we'll take some more questions while the poll is up. So the final question from me today, in terms of what we wanted to know, is what would you like the Trust to do more of in 2021? So do you want us to do more communication, publicise Bikeability more in the media, run public campaigns, develop more opportunities for piloting new Bikeability, or do you want us to engage more actively with the industry? And Jessica, whilst that's up, do we want to take any more?
Yes, so we've got one question here which is related to the poll that's happening at the moment. James Harris has asked, are we trying to raise the profile for bikeability and cycling by engaging a celebrity or a kind of recognised role model like Marcus Rashford has been doing for free school meals for children? I'm sure you've got lots of ideas about that, Emily.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jane, thank you for the question. Yes, absolutely. We need some ambassadors. We need some diverse ambassadors. We need those who are already active in the cycling community, and those who could particularly target the groups, underrepresented groups that we want to get into the cycling community. So we are doing some work in this space. We don't have any appointments that we've made currently, but we are really, really open and wanting some suggestions from industry about who we should be approaching. But it's absolutely part of our partnerships plan is to appoint a whole series of ambassadors that can really highlight bikeability for us. So if you've got suggestions, let us have them, because we're keen to hear those. We're doing the thinking about the right processes and systems and things that need to be set up around ambassador appointments. On publicising bikeability in the media, absolutely. I have a strong media background, strong media relationships, and I will do an interview anytime we can to get bikeability out there. We've already significantly done more media in the last few months than the Trust had done in the past. Capacity it was obviously a really significant issue for the Trust in the past to be able to do that. So we're doing more, and we've also now got some proper media monitoring tools. So I can tell you in the last quarter, we've had 346 press articles mentioned about bikeability in the last quarter. That was compared to, I think we were only tracking sort of in the 20s in previous quarters. So it just shows you how much we are now doing to make sure that bikeability is very much out there in the media. Was there another question you said as well, Jessica?
We've got a couple of comments of people who'd like to see some more options in this poll. So Andrew has said that he thinks the current focus should be on recruitment and training of new instructors, which has been a theme throughout, which is really helpful. And also working more closely with cycling instructors to generate ideas for change and improvement. So just a couple of bits of feedback there. And then all of the other questions, if you're happy, we'll answer those after we've looked at the poll.
Can I just give a reflection to Andrew's questions there? So on instructor recruitment, so as I mentioned, definitely we're putting that into the bids for the future, that the trust can shoulder some of the burdens of that. I've also been talking to cycle industry about how they can help us with recruitment, because they have audiences that are keen cyclists and could help, and that's something that quite a few of the cycling industry providers are quite keen to support Bikeability with. So we're just trying to think of other ways, because we don't have the money to be able to do this at the moment, that we can do that creatively. So it's definitely something that we are thinking about. Great. So poll number 4. So we can finish that one off now. So I think that one's got a fairly clear winner. So running public campaigns on the importance of cycle training. So yeah, I agree, that's something we'd love to do more of. And Jessica and Isabel are definitely looking at ways that we can get more information out. So you may have missed some of the things that we did in the summer, but we've produced things like top tips for family cycling. We've got some family cycling films that we've put out, and we'll continue to do those. We've also done some advertorials, so ads out in things like The Guardian and The Times and things like that, giving out top tips and safe tips for cycling as well. So we're definitely starting to do more in this space, but we are limited by the resource that we've got. So the more resource we can get in, the more public campaigning we can do. But I'm sure that is music to Jessica and to Isabel's ears, that's something that you're really keen for us to be doing more of. And we absolutely, you have a absolute commitment from me. We want to engage with industry constantly. It's why we're putting in a number of dates that we can do on the stakeholder engagement. We've got addresses. I'm always willing and wanting to meet with people to hear from industry what it's like out there and how we can improve. There is an open door constantly to the trust to give your feedback, good, bad, and indifferent. We want to hear it, and that's a cast iron guarantee from us that the trust's ears and eyes are absolutely open. So please do engage with us. Okay, so I think you've heard an awful lot from me. I've been answering your questions as we go along, but Jessica, you did say there were some more questions, but it will give you a chance to type in some more questions as well if you've got any.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to start from the top. So there's some people who did submit a question earlier on in the presentation, so I'll be coming to your question now. So if you've not had a response, don't worry. We've also got Benjamin Smith on the panel here, who is our Development and Operations Director. So he will be on hand to answer any kind of more specific questions about delivery and the management guide as well. So between us all, you should hopefully get some good responses. So I'm just going to pop the first question up now. Which again, obviously there's a real concern at the moment with COVID about all of the costs and the future of instructors and providers. So we've got a question about a provider being able to access help as a business.
Yeah, so we have absolutely worked really hard with Treasury, with Cabinet Office, and with Department for Transport. I was reflecting the other day with civil servants that we're only one industry where government is paying grants money in a different way. So many other industries have just been channeled down the coronavirus job support scheme, the furlough scheme, etc. But we were able to secure the grants money to be paid out for cancelled COVID places, because that's the level of commitment that we have to making sure that our industry is supported in this period. Donna, who's our finance director, has been doing some work on the grant per head level, and David and Julia are supporting that work currently, because we do We do agree that that has not been reviewed for a significant period of time. And as we've talked about throughout this webinar, we want to retain efficiency, but we want to make sure that these are attractive career options that encourage people and training providers can weather more difficult times, because we're not going to be able to always be in the happy times. You know, COVID has shone a light on how difficult it is to keep industry going. So for the future, definitely. I am doing some reflecting with the department currently on the grant structure and how it sits for the remaining few months of this financial year, but we haven't got any decisions that we can share yet on. But rest assured, we are doing everything that we can to push and to look at the importance of training providers and instructors and making sure that you can weather this really difficult period.
And then related to that, we've got a question specifically about instructors. Now, I know you've talked in the presentation, and this was an earlier question, Emily, about funding per head for going forwards, but this specifically asks about any imminent increases per head. So could you just outline the timescales to that?
Grant structure,
as much as you can.
The grant structure is fixed to March 2021. There will be nothing that we can change necessarily in this year. It is within our gift, and that's why we're doing the work to look at the simplified grant structure, making sure that we can build in some of the admin costs to make sure that instructor pay is absolutely vital in making sure the industry gets everything that it needs. But the thing that we don't have at the Trust, and the thing that I've repeatedly asked, and I've asked the union for this information, we asked training providers for this information, we don't even know what the average instructor pay is. We have to work off anecdote. We need evidence. So we need to build up the evidential picture of what is instructor pay even looking like, and how does that sit in the grant per head levels that go out. So if evidence can be shared with us, we can build a case for building this into a grant per head level in the future. But there's such wide and varying differences across the whole of England. It's very difficult for us at the moment to get access to the evidence. But rest assured that we are considering this. We are building a programme of work for future grant allocation, which looks at instructor pay, it looks at admin costs, it looks at profitability, it looks at grant structure, so that we have a simplified grant structure with the focus on programme delivery.
Thanks, Emily. Next, we have a question from Darren, who's asked about all of the changes that have happened to the Trust, specifically about the link database and some of the kind of issues that we've had with that rollout process, and how we can kind of ease that journey a little bit more.
Yeah. So thanks for your question. Link is now live. We went for a onboarding process that was staged, so that we weren't pulling. We were testing parts of the system and making sure that it worked effectively before we onboarded absolutely everybody. Inevitably, with any system, even though we have spent months working on this system, until you go live, there were some kinks in it, and there were kinks that we didn't foresee or didn't come up in previous testing rounds. So it is a heartfelt apology that for those of you who've struggled to get on, for those of you who it doesn't work with your browser, for those of you whose dates were changed that shouldn't have been changed on the system, we are ironing out all of those bugs, and we're sorry that it's not been the best experience for those of you logging on. Moving forward, Link is going to be a fantastic tool, but we've got to get through this period and the bugs and the difficulties of a new system before it's fully operational and fully working. So I'm confident that Link's going to be a good tool in the future, but as I said, I'm sorry that it hasn't been the best experience. Again, we are a very, very, very tiny small team with a real limited amount of staff time to do this. So the team are honestly working around the clock and trying as hard as possible to answer all queries, but do bear with us. But Link will be a good tool in the future. I'm confident of that.
We've also got a couple of questions of people who can't log in, so I will type the email address that you need to contact in order to do that. So not to worry, but to move on to the next question, we've got a question from Stuart about future roles of school games organiser or school sports partnerships, and what the future role of they seem to be within the Trust.
Thanks for your question. We have a great relationship with a number of SGOs as grant recipients and school sports partnerships. As I've mentioned a few times throughout the webinar, the grant structure and getting the most efficient and effective way of delivering and administering the grant is something that we are working through as part of the Bikeability for All programme. So David and Julia are absolutely key in feeding through thoughts and thinking through what that looks like in the future. And I hope you'll agree with the two project directors that we've put in place. So we have David from a local authority background and Julia from an SGO background. They are bringing those complementary skills to be able to really think this through about the future role for SGOs and SSPs. So until we get the CSR announcements, until we look at and see what the grant structure is in the future, we really want to take the feedback and work that through currently. So I can't give you an answer, but I hope you can see that we've got the right team supporting this, bringing both sets of complementary skills.
Thanks, Emily. The next question we've got is from Dave, and it's about government-backed public information about cycle training. So kind of some negative press that we see, drivers who don't understand. I don't know whether you want to answer this, Emily, or it might be more suitable for Benjamin.
I'm happy if Benjamin's ready to comment on. Always delight to hear from Benjamin. But I can reflect on my own experience. I get questions all the time about when doing media interviews about cyclist behaviour, red lights, helmets, all those traditional questions that you would expect to have on a media interview. If you're asking, do we think that government needs to do more to share the impacts of cycle training and how cycle training can help both drivers and all road users, then I would think our answer is yes. We would love government to be doing some more media and public behaviour change campaigning focus on this. It's going to have to come out of some of the highway code work, that will inevitably be what government will have to do. But we definitely think that more should be put out there about positive views of how cycle training can really help all road users. Benjamin, is there anything you'd want to add? You're muted, by the way, Benjamin. No, you're unmuted
now. There we go.
No, I still can't hear Benjamin. Is that just me?
Yeah. Okay, it's a great question, and we are working with other industry professionals in this space. So, sort of one example being with ADI, so advanced driving instructors and learner drivers, to see how we can embed what good cycling looks like, what perhaps an untrained cyclist looks like, and how they can differentiate between the two and respond accordingly. Because at the end of the day, we want to make the road a benign and predictable place. So yeah, we're looking to influence where we can. Obviously, there was the highway code review that Emily referenced, which we submitted our response to, which you can all we'll be able to have a look at, which we'll release in the November newsletter. So yes, we're doing our best to work with everybody we can in the across the board to promote good cycling, tell everybody what it looks like, and try and break down a lot of these barriers. I don't know if that really answers the question, but it's like, yes, we're doing everything that we can. And would encourage everybody to do that locally as well with your own local groups.
That's great. If we just move on to the next question then, we've got some specific questions here about the idea of instructor bursaries and what qualifications that might include, whether that's first for sport, level 3, or whether an RPL qualification. Obviously, it's early days, but I don't know whether either of you can offer some insight to that.
No decisions have been taken currently. First things first, we need to secure the money in the comprehensive spending review, and then with the money that we've got, then decisions can be taken about it. But Benjamin and the team will be leading on that and leading with First for Sport about how we can embed that in. But no, we certainly haven't taken a decision on that. So welcome views. So thanks for the question.
We've also got some further questions about the link database. So if helpful, please put in your feedback forms at the end if it would be useful to have a webinar session specifically on link, because that is something that we could arrange for the new year if that would be useful, because obviously we're seeing a lot of questions come in here So if that would be more valuable, with Anchor attending, who obviously you will probably all know has been leading on that project, we can arrange that. But the questions that we've got here are more about the information required, and that there's a lot more data collection required with the linked database, and a couple of concerns relating to that.
So, Jessica, just are those concerns on sort of SEND and pupil data, aggregated pupil data?
Partly about GDPR, but also about the time and resource required to collect that data.
Yeah. So those requirements to record SEND, free school meals, gender, ethnicity, etc., have actually been in grant terms and conditions for all grant recipients. So they've always been there. They just haven't been collected and collated in this way. So it's something that we need to collect and are collecting. There isn't GDPR implications because we're not collecting any personalised data. It's all anonymised and aggregated at the trust level. So there isn't a GDPR implication on that. I do recognise that this does take admin time. So again, reflecting back to what we've said about sort of the grant per head level, this is why we need to build up a realistic sense of the costs of bikeability, rather than what is sort of the historic that's been built in. So it's definitely being built into the future thinking and where we might land.
Thank you. So we've got kind of more of a comment than a question from James, but it's a useful point, I think, saying that there's a significant opportunity to work with mental health organisations at the moment, particularly in the current climate, and that cycling is a real opportunity when other sports and clubs are being cancelled, to keep children active and to keep them kind of mentally well as physically well.
Oh, wholeheartedly agree. Thanks for the question, because it's something that I'm hugely passionate about. So having spent a good 10 years at Childline, I've already reached out to my former colleagues, and there is a bit on the Childline website that kind of talks around cycling, other sports around mental health and well-being. So, but it's an area we could and should be doing much more on. Again, dependent on resource and stretching the team, but those sort of partnerships beyond the traditional cycling world, to be able to reach out to other more vulnerable groups and groups who aren't necessarily seeing cycling yet, is something that we definitely have that longer term ambition for. But we should and can be doing a little bit more in this area through the context that we've got. Some of it you might not see happening. It's just emails that go across, and then we get people to link out to the Bikeability website or to the top tips that we've got for safe cycling, but others will be a lot more present.
Thanks for that. And then we've just got a point here from Anna, which I'm sure will come up in some of the Bikeability for All sessions as well, about whether costs for fleets of bikes and vans to transport these will be factored into the new Bikeability for All per head costs.
Definitely, we'll take that one down as a question that needs to go into the workshops that are looking at. Great question. We've done a little bit of thinking about it, particularly around kind of the VR modelling offer. So some costs have been built in, but again, this is all very much what we need to do as part of this programme development of Bikeability for All. So we'll definitely log that one, and David and Julia will put that down as part of the workshop stuff that we're doing in coming weeks.
And then we've got an anonymous question here, whether the money for cancelled sessions is actually going to the instructors who have had work cancelled during COVID-19.
So thank you for that. It's a concern that we are looking at currently. We've had a number of people contact us through relationships with grant recipients. So we are looking at that. It should be, but I'm worried to hear that is the case. So it's something that we're considering at the moment. I don't have a trust response for you yet, because that's something that needs to be looked at with DFT. I can tell you absolutely that we are under significant levels of scrutiny, and rightly so, for COVID cancelled courses, because Cabinet Office is looking at everything that we do. So every grant recipient that puts in a claim for COVID cancelled courses has to provide, as you know from the FAQs that we've sent out, a significant level of evidence of individual individual instructors and why individual instructors aren't able to access government support schemes. So we're looking again at that whole system and making sure that the money goes to where it needs to go. So bear with us. We are looking at that one again. And I don't have anything I can share currently, but rest assured that we're looking at it.
Thanks, Emily. I'm just going through the rest of the questions. We've got some more link questions, which I will get back to you all individually via the chat function. If we've got one here, an anonymous attendee saying that if there was a local authority with a large number of primary schools who were interested in piloting bikeability on the curriculum, could that happen?
Oh, that would be an interesting one. So I think because there's a bit of a difficulty with the national curriculum. I spent about 12 years of my life securing the support through Parliament to get relationship and health education on the curriculum. And it does take a piece of primary legislation. National curriculum is subject to a statutory instrument in Parliament. Sorry, ex-policy and public affairs person. I get very animated about political and parliamentary process. So we can't change the national curriculum. And because it's a national curriculum, local authorities, unless they are academies, and then they're free from the national curriculum, can't pilot it. So unless it's an academy chain that you're talking about, where you could do that. If it was a local authority maintained, grant maintained area, you couldn't do it, unfortunately. And it's going to take us a number of years to find that right piece of legislation to get it on the curriculum, but I'm not going to rest until we get it. But if it's an academy, go for it. We'd fully back that.
And then we've just got 3 more questions up on the screen, but they look just more like comments to me. So Jane Dealey saying that she challenged the new requirements and conditions, and we have had some people say they are struggling to access ethnic data and pupil premium. So we'll take those away and look at those internally, but thank you for raising those, everyone. And then also Andrew have made a comment about there's a daily ceiling of hours working per day. So really instructors are only working a maximum of 5 hours a day. And that is one of the contributing factors which makes the industry perhaps less appealing to people, which is a really useful point again.
Very useful point. And just on sort of link and database and admin time, etc. This is why we think we need a much better national booking system for everyone to be able to use. Because actually, if you had a digital system that schools are using, that parents are using, that's using digital to collate all that information, it massively reduces the burden on individual providers. It will save time. It will absolutely save time. I have experience of implementing this at an NSPCC level who have a school offer that visits and goes around all schools, and all of this is done digitally. So I know how to do it. We've just got to get the money to be able to have the right booking system to enable this to happen. So I think the future is really exciting for us at the Trust and for you, that we'll make this more attractive and a better supported industry in the future. But I'm just going to ask for your patience and your forbearance as we both secure the money and really sort of level this vision up to support you. But rest assured, the Trust absolutely values, appreciates, and really, really is thankful for everything that you're doing in this period. And if we're not saying it enough, I'm going to keep saying it, because I am so grateful for everything that you're doing.
Yeah, and there's a useful comment from Jane there, just clarifying that she doesn't disagree with the reasoning for it, but that there was kind of a lack of preparation and time to set up that collection system. So that's really useful for us, that we could have managed that a little bit better, and it's good to know.
We are trying to look at a workaround for it currently, because we do recognise that.
So we've just got a couple more questions. So if you've got anything that you haven't asked yet, we've got about 5 minutes left on the session, so please submit them now. But Andrew's asked whether there is any more funds available for the rest of the budget year, as cancelled courses have obviously limited the funding that's available.
So Andrew, that's an easy one for us to be able to answer. We've already let grant recipients know, and we'll be sending out allocations. I hesitate to say by the end of November, because it probably will be more December. We had a 1920 programme underspend, And we always run a waiting list. You all know we run a waiting list. So for those grant recipients who are on the waiting list, they will get a revised and an additional allocation for this year. So if your grant recipient was already on the waiting list and they've responded back to the trust over the last few weeks and said, yes, they can take more grant money and do more bikeability, then they will be getting that information over the next coming weeks. The other thing that I've mentioned earlier that we were doing is obviously putting out the Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Innovation Fund money. So that's the Trust's Innovation Fund money that we hold and we have responsibility for to pilot bikeability with SEND. And then the third thing that we're doing with money is putting out an allocation for Bikeability Family as soon as national lockdown conditions meet. So that's, again, grant recipients were asked to if they wanted to take on Bikeability Family and how many places they thought they could provide. And we're just working through those allocations currently to be able to provide it. So that's the only new-ish money that's coming in to the system for this year. We constantly re-amend grant allocations with our grant recipients, so that's a very kind of live process. I have asked DFT for further money, but there isn't any further money for cycle training in this year's budget. Everything is tied to the CSR.
So then I've just got a question that I can help with here. That the question on the ability to purchase badges and certificates separately, I answered them individually, but I appreciate that not everybody would have been able to see that answer. But if you email orders@bikeabilitytrust.org, then the team will be able to support you via that email address. So then we've got a question from Clive about, is there a process or a link to apply for that funding that you've just mentioned, Emily?
It will all be via grant recipients. So grant recipients have been informed that this is coming. We'll get that allocation out in the coming weeks.
Great. And then final question, I'm just looking forward from Elizabeth. When can we expect to receive the 2021 onwards grant funding application?
Oh, Elizabeth, I'd love to tell you an exact date. So this is all dependent on the CSR process. We expect now that has been put down to a 1-year CSR. I expect we'll hear by December what the sort of the overall allocation is for bikeability. And I say expect, I keep saying hope actually, and keeping my fingers crossed. But that doesn't necessarily then mean we'll be able to get out any clarity for industry until the new year. All of this rests on a long-winded timescale of political deliberation, and we will push as hard as we can. What I constantly say to ministers, constantly say to officials, is that the sooner we get the grant process out, the sooner we get clarification out, the more stabilising we will do of industry. If we have to wait till the last minute to tell people, it's going to be we know it's going to be very difficult. So rest assured that we are pushing for as soon as we possibly can, but we are tied to a political timeline here, which right now is very difficult to predict. So it's a hope, it's a push. That's what we're doing. We're pushing as hard as we can. I ask officials every single day if it helps you. I texted a few officials yesterday and said, I'm so sorry that I've probably turned into a bit of a stalker, but until you get me the confirmation, you're going to be asked every day.
Thanks, Emily. So we're just going to come on to the last question. We've got a couple of nice comments coming through for the Q&A, so thank you, really appreciate that. We've got a final question about, will the Bikeability Trust move towards a helmet neutral policy or stance? Currently our promotion is all very heavily helmeted and PPE'd. Emily, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about our kind of position document that we've been working on and your personal view on this.
You want me to ask my personal view? Okay, so this isn't being coming new to the cycling world. I probably had some quite different sort of more naive views before I joined. So I think everyone's aware of the trust position. What Jessica and Isabel are doing currently is putting together a communications lines document, which we then need to agree with the Board of Trustees. So I can't give you a revised or a renewed trust position in any way, shape or form on this call, because we need to go through due process. But with some of these issues around helmets, it's something that does need looking at. My personal view, and if people ask me for my personal view, is I absolutely see that helmets will help, but they are a barrier to children, and particularly children in poverty. So I think our lines have been historically fairly right that we recommend helmets are able to be used for children, but we wouldn't turn away a child for bikeability training if they didn't have one. But my own kids wear helmets. I wear a helmet. So that's my personal view.
Thanks, Emily. And yeah, just thank you for the comments, Sue and Tracy, just saying that they found it really helpful. Just like to reiterate again that when we end this session in a moment, the screen will link you to a post-event survey. Be really helpful if you could answer that for us, particularly as I mentioned at the start, we've got 5 more sessions. They're going to be happening at 10 a.m. on Friday for the next 5 weeks. So if you've not registered yet, please have a look on the website or on the emails that you've received to register for those. We've still got spaces. Then, yeah, if you can, we can then make any tweaks or changes that we need to do for those future webinars. But I'll hand back to Emily now just to finish off her slides.
Because I know we've gone just slightly over time, so thank you for those of you who are still remaining with us. But I'm going to say again the big thank you to all of you, both for today, but also constantly what you're doing to support bikeability. Our door is open. We want to hear. We want to engage. We do want to do this to be a vision that's very much with you, and there are ways that you can support us. So this is an absolute help us develop that bikeability for all, help us develop the roadmap, help us level up quality across the programme. Our new EQA support offer will be coming out fairly soon, and we really hope that lots of training providers will want to take part in that. And we really need to hear more from you. I love it when I get a letter from a parent or a child or a training provider tags me on Twitter with something that they've been doing. We want that constantly to be happening so that we can share and show the impact of what you're doing day in, day out, and the stories that you've got. So I would love it if we were hearing more of that from you. And then if you can help us grow, I know lots of people are ethically opposed to Amazon, but you can donate to the trust by purchasing your normal things via Amazon Smile. So don't go to Amazon, go to Amazon Smile, choose the Bikeability Trust, and you will be able to donate money so that more children can get access to cycling. And then if you can spread the word on social media and help us grow our fundraising partnerships, we would love to hear from you. So it's always just wanting to hear from you and how you can support our vision. And then just finally, Jessica's mentioned the feedback form, but I hope you've all got my details. If you haven't, there's my email, there's my phone number. I love to hear from you. So please do get in touch if there are things that you'd like to pick up or talk about directly. So thank you very much. Please stay safe out there. Please know you're valued. And we look forward to engaging with you further as we develop up our vision and the Bikeability for All programme for the future. Take care.